So, I have this friend, and every time that he and I get together, it ends up being this rehash of the good old days. Like, every single time that he and I hang out, it's just, do you remember the good old days? Do you remember when we did this? Oh, remember when we were TPing and we almost got caught? Like, oh, those were the good days. And I love those days. I actually had a wonderful high school, a series of high school years. I had great friends from high school. My best friends, save for Melissa, my best friends are all my buddies from high school. Those were great years for me. But every time I hang out with my friend, it's like the best days are behind him. His best days are behind. He's my age. A 30-year-old. I'm not quite 30, but soon. My best days are not behind me. They're still ahead. But for my friend, it's like, if only I could go back. If only I could go back. Well, that's an easy sort of belief to develop, because you hear it all the time. How many of us have heard old married couples say things like, if only we could go back to the way that it was magical at the beginning. If only we could recapture that magic. Or how many older business partners say to each other, if we could just go back to how that excitement, the way it was in the beginning when we just were starting out as new business partners, if only we could go back there. You hear people saying all the time, I just wish we could do things the way we used to do things. I just wish we could keep doing things the way that we've always done things. This sort of nostalgic sentiment can move from sort of false memories of a past that never actually was. It can kind of glorify the past with this kind of nostalgia, but it can move into something far more destructive. And you hear frequently about women who return to their abusers. You hear about spouses who have been abused and then they go back to their abusers for fear that something else might be not any better. We call this Stockholm Syndrome. We're afraid to leave the past behind and to move into the future, even if the past isn't that great. But at the center of God's beautiful creation, at the center of the universe, is this concept called the cosmological arrow of time. The cosmological arrow of time essentially states that the universe is always expanding. It's always growing. It's always moving forward, progressing, expanding. The universe can't retreat upon itself. The universe can't go back. The universe can't do things the way things used to be. The universe can't keep doing things the way that it's always been, because at the center of God's beautiful creation is this constant sense of expansion and progression and movement. An essential characteristic of God's creation is the sense of constant progression. For many of us, this is a difficult thing to wrestle with. For many of us, this is a hard realization. It was for the wandering group that we read about in our First Testament reading today. That group of people called the Israelites. In our first reading today, we see that this group of formerly enslaved people, this group of people who have been abused and marginalized and beat up and broken, we find them struggling to leave that past behind. We find them like, I can't let go. Can we just go back to Egypt? Because leaving our pasts, leaving our painful histories, leaving our addictions, leaving our unhealthy relationships, leaving behind things, doing things the way that we've always done them, it's never easy. You can almost hear these Israelites saying, yeah, being in slavery sort of wasn't great, but at least we had water. And now we're in the wilderness, in this place where it's like, where are we going to get our water? They're ready to pounce on Moses, their leader. You know, the guy who kind of helped them out of Egypt? The guy who helped them cross the river and leave slavery in the past? They're ready to pounce on him. They're ready to stop trusting in God's faithfulness. You know, the divine, which has been constantly leading them out of slavery, leading them out of Egypt, leading them by a cloud of fire, separating rivers, providing food for them, constantly providing. And God has this amazing future in store for them. God has this amazing story. God is going to soon speak to Moses and speak to everyone and give this amazing covenant. These people, the Israelites, are about to become partners in God's ongoing work of reconciling all things. God isn't going to provide water for them. God has hopes and adventures. God has this eternal life. God isn't going to just provide water for them. It's as if they're holding on to their water jars. It's as if they're holding on to their jars, waiting for water. It's like the jars are more than just jars. It's like the water that they're thirsty for. It's more than just water. They're holding on to their struggles. They're holding on to their past. Thirsty for life. Because sometimes water jars are more than just water jars. And sometimes water is more than just water. Which leads us to that powerful New Testament story that we just heard read by Pastor Bruce. Once upon a time, Jesus met a woman by a well. And as we start sort of grappling with this story, let's keep a few things in mind. First, I know I'm about to blow your mind here. First, she's a woman. I know, you didn't see that one coming. Newsflash, Samaritan woman is a woman. That's funny because I'm hearing that in the voice of the Muppets newsman. Anyway, it's really funny to me, and hopefully it eventually becomes funny to you. But she's a woman. That's really important to take note of. Really, really important to take note of. Why? Because unmarried men in Jesus' time and context don't speak with unmarried women. It's taboo. Second, she's a Samaritan. But for Jews, the Samaritans were a painful reminder of a tragic history. The Samaritans had become, for many Jews, that unclean, unpious, dirty, unreligious group of others. Because during the Assyrian invasion of a few hundred years before this story, when the Assyrians came in and invaded Israel, the armies took Israelite women and forced them into marriage. The Samaritans are the descendants of these relationships. So when Jesus is starting to talk to her, it's no wonder that she responds with are you talking to me? How are you, a Jew, talking to me, a Samaritan? And she's not indignant. She isn't being indignant. She's just shocked. How many people have reached out to her? Jesus doesn't just break the ice here. Jesus smashes the ice. Because Jesus sees her water jar, not only representational of her chores and her hard life, but Jesus sees it as symbolic for the tragedies that she's holding on to. And Jesus offers her something else. He offers her living water, the kind of water that continuously flows, an eternal spring of water. Because sometimes water jars are more than just water jars. Sometimes water is more than just water. Jesus sees her. Jesus reaches out to her and tells her that he sees her. He sees all of her. He sees her past. He sees her story. He sees her tragic history. He sees her water jar, and he sees that her water jar is more than just a water jar. I think that we haven't really seen this woman. I think that our common interpretation has been misguided. I think we haven't seen her. What's more likely in her context? A woman who's had 5 husbands and somehow not been stoned because she's sexually loose? Or a woman who's had 5 husbands because her day and age, it's easy to divorce and abandon a woman? Is it much more likely that she's been abandoned, divorced, widowed? Which is more likely? That she's living with a man who's not her husband because she's scandalous and somehow getting away with it in her culture, in her context? Or is it much more likely that she's living with the brother of her dead husband, which was the common practice? Her life's not scandalous. Her life's tragic. And Jesus sees all of it. Jesus sees her story. Jesus sees her tragic life. He sees her pain. He sees what she's holding on to. Being seen is nice, isn't it? Being seen can be uplifting, can be transformational. One of my favorite theologians tells the story of a friend of his who makes the daily commute from Connecticut to New York City. And one day she was running late, she was pretty frantic, she grabbed her bag, she grabbed her work bag, and she took off down to the train, hopped on the train, sat down and began fiddling with stuff. And then she noticed that the conductor was coming by to collect the tickets. So she went into her bag to try and find a ticket, and she realized that in her frantic hurry, she had forgot to bring her ticket. And she started panicking. Oh my God, I forgot my ticket. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And he kept getting closer and closer and closer. She kept looking, but it wasn't there. And so, by the time the conductor finally arrived, she was just like, I don't know what to tell you. I've had a frantic day. I don't have my ticket with me. But when she looked up at him, something just moved her and asked, how's your day going? And he sat down, and they talked for like 10 to 15 minutes, sharing life. They shared pictures of babies, or like grandbabies. It's just 10 to 15 minutes of real life being shared. 2 people seeing each other. And as he stood up, because he did need to keep working, he did need to keep collecting tickets, she said, sir, I don't know what to tell you, I'm so sorry, I'll get a ticket at the next stop. He said, ma'am, don't worry about it. It's just so nice to be seen. It's so nice for us to be seen. So nice to be seen. And love is the very thing that allows us to see each other. Love is the very thing that allows us to see. When I'm in a room full of strangers, if Melissa is in the room, I can somehow see her because of that intimate love I have for her. I can see her in the midst of everyone else who's a total stranger. On our wedding day, it's a total cliche, but on our wedding day, standing there at the front, out of love, I could only see her. Everyone else kind of faded. God, love sees this woman. Christ sees this woman and uplifts her, calls her into being, lifts her into a higher mode of being, and it transforms her life. It transforms her pain. Because Jesus sees her. Jesus sees her and offers her living water. Love is the very thing that moves Jesus to see her. Jesus, being love itself, sees her and he offers her hope, freedom, grace, and love. He offers her life. And the same faithful God who delivered the Israelites out of slavery, who provided a way by fire and cloud, who provided them water from a rock, is the same divine presence that saw this heartbroken woman. And rather than just offering water, just mere water, Jesus offered her life, eternal water, the true and abundant life. Jesus offers her out of love the chance to live with arms wide open. And as we see in the text, when she moves to go visit with people in her town to tell them of the experience that she's had, she, without much notice, sort of leaves her water jar behind and moves on. She's left it. She's left her water jar because it's time to let go. Because the water jar doesn't offer eternal life. Because it's time to stop holding on. It's time to just let go. Because it was time for her to start living into the future, into the hope, into the life that God had prepared. It was time for her to just let go and to be open to life. What holds us back? What jars are you holding on to? Your painful past? Shameful habit? Hurt? An unhealthy relationship? Some sort of grief and loss? Guilt? Anxiety? Maybe you're holding on to, if only I had done this. What are you holding on to? Today I'm going to invite Mark to start playing music. And as he begins to play music, I invite you to stretch out your arms. I know this is uncomfortable, but you can do it. I know you can do it. I invite you to open up your arms and to imagine a water jar. I want you to imagine that you're squeezing onto that water jar. Name your water jar. Name the thing that you're holding on to. Name the pain or the hurt. Name the thing that's holding you back. And as the chorus begins to emerge, start unraveling your fingers. Start letting it go. Sing with us. Life with open arms. May you find that God sees you. Christ sees you. All of you. Your entire story. God sees any tragedy. God sees any hurt. God sees any loss. God sees any pain. God has this abundance life full of eternal water, this real and beautiful future. When we hold on to things, find ourselves stuck. But God is inviting us. God is inviting us to the eternal water. And so may you live life with open arms. May you live life full and open to everything that is true and abundant in life. May you be open to the beauty. May you be open to the futures. If there's something you're holding on to, if there's something worth celebrating in your past, celebrate it. If there's something that you should honor from your past, honor it. If there's something that you need to grieve, grieve. But in time, may you find yourself open. Open. May you find yourself moving in rhythm with the universe, the cosmological arrow of time. May you find yourself open by God's grace. May you find yourself open to see, to be seen.